Welcome to Made for Mondays, the source for digging a little deeper into the Believer's Church Sunday messages and finding ways to apply them to our daily lives. Together, let's take a deeper look and find a way to bring Mondays back to life.
Hey everybody, welcome to the pod. My name is Heather, and who are you fellas?
Well, hey there, Heather. It is me, Jamie, and it's good to see everybody.
Good to see you.
Hey, Heather, Tyler, here, back. Feels good?
Yep,
in the pod.
good. I know, you're in the speaker seat.
Feels weird. I'm usually sitting where Kevin is.
Yeah.
This feels different.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
Hey, I'm sorry, Kevin.
That's all right, man. I'm Kevin. I'm here visiting from France, which I'm sure we'll probably talk about here in a minute.
Yeah, maybe. Don't
Don't get
excited,
ahead of
Kevin.
yourself.
Jeepers.
Jeepers.
Good grief.
Well,
Put a guy on a mic and a
Right?
camera, and he's just raring to
Yeah.
go.
yeah.
He's in fundraising mode.
Yeah, he
Okay.
is.
You know,
You're right.
Yeah, click on the link at the bottom of your screen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Kevin's like, that's a
just
good
saying.
idea.
That is not a bad idea.
All right, guys. So tell me what your weekends look like. Did anybody do anything fun and exciting?
Tyler?
Yeah, so my parents were in. We actually stayed at the house that a family friend let me stay at when I first came here. So I didn't have to just go to an apartment when I first moved here, which was very, very nice.
Nice.
And so the whole family was here. My parents, my grandmother, my great aunt, and my brother and his wife and my
Man, it's
nephew.
like a family reunion.
It was awesome.
That's
It was.
awesome.
It was tiring, but it was awesome. Yeah.
Wasn't that down in Ocean View, right? So you had some beach time too?
Beach time,
Nice.
just hung out, took Murphy down there. He ate a lot of sand. Had to take him back.
Yeah.
But it was fun. It was good.
He
Good.
ate a lot of sand.
He just does that. I don't get what he's. I just don't understand.
Tell
He
us
just-
who Murphy is. Some people might not know who Murphy is.
He is the best French bulldog in the world. I know there's a Winston won the AK, whatever the thing, but Murphy could get him. He could take him.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so.
Wow.
Yeah.
I wonder if the world leading one eats sand.
Probably not.
Yeah.
That's probably why he's the world one. You know?
Oh,
Do
that's the
you-
qualification. is
Yeah.
Maybe
it?
so, something
Very
like
good.
that.
Right,
All right.
Tyler, doesn't Murphy have his own Instagram account?
He does. It's called Murphy's Law. Murphy's Law.
Yeah, it's a great
Which
profile. I have seen it. You showed it to me. I don't have Instagram, but it is a great profile. I love it.
He does a good job running it. He makes good posts. He takes good pictures. And, yeah.
Oh, bless your heart.
That's funny.
Jamie, what about you?
My weekend wasn't super interesting.
It's very interesting.
Last week was very interesting, but the weekend was less interesting. Well, it's only my second time ever staying in a hospital
Okay.
in my entire life.
Right.
That's pretty amazing. So
That
I'm
is pretty amazing.
55 and only the second time. First time was when I was in boot camp. I was 17 years old, so that's how long it's been since
Yeah. Was it for the same thing?
and it was for the exact same thing.
That's amazing.
A terrible spider bite that got away from me.
Got away from
Got away
Yeah,
from you.
it was.
right.
It was not great. So I went to the doctor on Friday, and it's never a good sign when the doctor is like Googling.
Oh, right. I
know?
had that happen a couple weeks
Yeah,
ago, too.
so I'm
Google.
sitting there talking to the doctor, and I see him Googling. And I'm like, WebMD right
Oh,
in
the
front of me.
doctor was Googling.
Yeah.
Oh,
Like,
geez.
I mean,
Yeah.
I WebMD before I came here, you know?
Oh, my
Right.
gosh.
That's why I'm here.
That's not a good sign. So he says, I'll be right back. And he leaves for a few minutes, and
Oh,
he comes
gosh.
back,
Oh, boy.
and he says, I've conferred with some other doctors.
And WebMD.
On the internet.
and the internet. I didn't really think about that, but yeah, that's probably what it
I've
was.
conferred with the internet.
There's an internet consensus that you should go to the emergency room. And he said, I'm sorry. I know those places are terrible. They're full of sick people, but you need to go. I was like, all right. So my doctor's office is in the Bell Harbor building. So
Yeah.
I walked out the one door and then in
Right,
the
right.
emergency room
Yeah.
door. And they took me right back, gave me 500 milliliters of antibiotic intravenously. And then it took about 2.5 hours. And I thought they're going to say, all right, we'll see you.
Bye.
Come back in,
Yeah.
a couple weeks. We'll see how it looks. And they said, we're going to keep you. I was like, okay. I said, can I drive myself over to OBC?
They
said
said
no.
no.
Well, you can, but then you'll have to go through their emergency room to
Right.
get readmitted because I already had an IV and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, all right. So first time in an ambulance,
How was that?
Hey, now.
there was a young guy in the back with me who all we did is talk about my motorcycle trips through the years.
Fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think he took any information.
Yeah.
When we got there, he's like, oh, yeah, I forgot. You need to sign this. It's like, okay. So he was a nice guy. His name was Jake. He's from California. And we had a great time talking about all of my experiences. He said I should write a book.
I have been saying that for
I
years.
know.
Thank you very
read
much.
That could be cool. Yeah.
I'm a little actually, I'm a lot annoyed at you right now that
know.
you would even entertain writing a book because of Jake. And
From State Farm?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not even
California.
acknowledge that
Well,
I've been saying that to you
yeah,
for
but you've
over 15 years.
You've been saying it about church-related stuff. He
don't-
said it was about my motorcycle trips.
It can be both.
It could be. In fact, it ought to be.
It ought to be.
Yeah, I think you're
You
right.
can make a great title. I can't think of it, but you could. Bikes and I don't know.
Check with Murphy. We'll figure it out. Yeah. So I spent the night Friday night, and then left the hospital Saturday after 7 bags of antibiotics being fed to me intravenously. It's a lot better than it was. So
And now
Yeah.
you have your one and only tattoo.
yeah. So while I was in the emergency room, I think, if I recall correctly, the doctor came in with a surgical pen and outlined my spider bite because it was spreading like crazy.
Yeah.
So they wanted to make sure it didn't spread. So yeah.
Oh, yeah.
For our viewers, it's way better than it was. I
Yeah.
mean, where you see the outline, it was red and inflamed and
It was
very
impressive.
puffy.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's still a little sore, but it's way better than it was. Although I did forget to take my antibiotic this morning. So yeah. It's hard to keep up with all this stuff. That's why they should give me IVs. Then you don't have
true.
to remember to take a pill.
It's true.
Yep.
So can you tell us really quick, you've mentioned your motorcycle trip.
Yeah.
So this is where you got the spider bite.
I got the spider bite
but
in
how
Harrison,
was it otherwise?
Arkansas.
Yeah.
It was a great trip. I'm wearing the highlight of my trip was the Evel Knievel Museum.
Yes.
It says American legend Evel Knievel. It was a great trip. So I'm in the process of finishing riding in the lower 48, and I had 2 states left. I knocked out one of them this year. It's a long way from home. Had to go to Kansas. Went to Topeka, Kansas. That's where the Evel Knievel Museum is.
Good old Midwest.
Then we rode down into the Ozarks. Stayed one night in Branson, Missouri.
Yeah.
Anyone familiar with what happens in Branson?
Yeah, old people go there.
Old people go there. It's a bunch of theaters and whatever. So I actually went to see Esther. Sight and Sound Productions. I think they have something up in Lancaster area.
Right.
They have one in Branson also. It was really good. It was amazing.
I can hardly believe you did that.
Well, Ray bought the ticket, so thanks, Ray.
You do love just immersing yourself in Christian subculture. So that's really
So sometimes I gotta say this. Sometimes I worry about myself. I'm sitting in this thing, and so like the crowd's reacting to different things. The story of Esther is a great story. I mean, it's such a good. And my granddaughter happens to be named Esther, so like it's this whole thing. It's a great biblical story. The theater production of it, a little bit of a, good guy, bad guy kind of thing. And the crowd's, clearly taking sides. And, the responses to some of the things, I'm like, I mean, this guy's getting ready. He's getting impaled on a pole.
and they're cheering.
And they're cheering
Oh, no.
as if, I don't know. So there's something about me that I cringe when I'm around lots of Christians.
Yeah.
So sometimes I'm like, maybe I'm not one of them. Because I just feel so out of sorts when I'm with
Yeah.
a bunch of Christians. But it was a really good production. It was good.
Oh my God.
And then we rode down into western Arkansas, and I kind of based myself out of there for a handful of days. And then
And that's where the spider got you.
that's where the spider got me. That happened Sunday. I left to come home on Tuesday, but I was 1,250 miles from home, so it took me a couple days
Right.
to get home. And then, then my weekend.
Yep.
Yeah.
Your weekend. All right.
But it was great. It was I'm not 100% sure, but I think our 17th year of
Wow.
annual schleps on the motorcycle. it's one of the highlights of my year every year.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. And it's my best friend, Ray Stewart, he used to be one of our elders. He's a retired naval chaplain. In fact, he was an elder when I became the interim senior pastor. And he was very helpful to Believers Church at the time. He preached once a month. And so it's him. And our friendship is pretty special.
Yeah.
And it's just, it makes that even better.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Kevin, did you do anything fun this weekend?
Well, I got to stay at the home of an old friend who had a really bad spider bite.
Oh, yeah?
And so that was cool.
Yeah, put him up in the Airbnb.
I know.
right.
How?
Yeah.
What? Give us your review. Pretend like Jamie's not listening.
Okay.
What's
so,
your Airbnb review?
No, like 5 stars. Very cool. Yeah.
Good.
It was really good. Yeah. Would stay again.
Oh, look
Okay,
at that.
look at that.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Excellent.
You can use this sound as a soundbite.
I will.
On your
He
Airbnb.
will.
Would stay again.
Would stay
I like
again.
it.
No, I mean, very cool. Yeah. No, it's been, we've been in the States now for, let's see, I first got here the 13th of April. So it's been a lot of traveling, but so it's fun to get to come here just because I feel so at home here and because Jamie and Bonnie, we've known them for such a long time,
Right.
and so we can kind of let our hair down and just be us and kind of hang. And so that's been really cool.
And Believers Church is kind of officially now.
You guys are officially our sending church.
We are the sending
Oh,
church.
that's
Oh,
amazing.
wow.
Yeah, so-
absolutely.
You guys switched to
Yeah.
a actual mission.
That's right.
Different story.
Different story. We won't go into, but yes. And they asked who our sending church would be, and I said, well, it should be Believers.
Yeah.
Oh,
So-
I love that.
I know. How cool is that?
Yeah.
So, we have contributed and invested in Kevin and Cheryl and what's going on in France pretty heavily for a very long time.
Very heavily.
And, it's just really cool. And I love that you got to share just a snippet of things going on. But, I mean, what's happening through the church there in France is really remarkable.
It is. Florent, who's a pastor that I work with at Jamie when he was in France, you were at one point Florent's intern. or
I
something.
was,
Yeah.
yes.
So this is going
Yep.
way back. But he and I often talk about it. Just feels like we're spectators watching God do this amazing
that's
stuff.
so
It is.
cool.
It is really remarkable what's
Yeah.
been going on, especially the last 5 years. It's been.
And Believers, for those of you who maybe don't remember, maybe you weren't around, but a couple, 3 years ago, we used the gift, our year-end offering, to invest in the construction of permanent worship space for the church.
In Trevoux
And the pastor there,
is Jeremy Bianchi.
yes,
Jeremy.
Jeremy. Also our producer. So you've been a part of that church, right?
I've been a part of that church. So I went over to France initially just as a worship guy at the at the time was the only church that there in Lyon in our group, and I was there for 17 years as a worship leader. So that church grew quite a bit. About 10 years ago, our first church plant just celebrated its 10th anniversary. So right about 10 years ago, we planted a church. It was a house group that Cheryl and I and another elder and his wife in the church started. And after a few years, it got to be a really solid group, and everybody kind of lived out in one area. So we said, hey, this looks like a church. So we did a church plant there.
Yeah.
That went well. A few years later, planted another. So now we're at the third church. We just planted our fourth church a few weeks ago. So now we're 5 churches in the greater Lyon area. And I'm at one of those church plants. So I was at the main church for like 17 years. And so since just a little before COVID, we've been at one of the extension churches out there. So in
So
Trevoux.
great.
Yeah, it's just amazing what God's been doing. It really is.
Very atypical
Yeah.
for what's happening in France.
It is. I shared with Jamie earlier. One thing that's funny is some of the people with our mission. They sent some of the church planters from Canada out to Lyon like last week to find out what we're doing. How are we planting churches with so little money? Because they're putting a lot of North America has an idea what church should look like, and it's bells and whistles. Kind of, or there's a certain idea that you.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, and so like, how are you planning all these churches without any money? And I was like, we don't have any money. We just go and plan. We just go get a group of believers together and that kind of lock arms and say, okay, here's a place where there isn't any Christian witness, and so let's start something here, which usually starts with a home group, and then we'll find a place to meet, and then it's once a month. And we've done it enough now that we sort of have an idea how it typically rolls. But it's it's simple. It's just very based on authenticity, because we don't really have any other choice. I mean, it's just very basic Christianity. Like, we're here, we're followers of Jesus. It's really, really atypical in France, so that makes us weird. And we sort of set up shop. Like, we're here in this place, and people come say, "What is this about?" And that's really all it is.
That's so awesome. Wow. And it's such a great segue into Sunday, because Tyler, you brought us the second message in our series, Unquestioned Answers. Unquestioned answers, guys.
That's it.
We keep messing this up.
Rochelle botched it second service. I don't know if she did first, but
she did. I don't think she did first. Last week, Doug, even in attempting to say that he didn't want to mess it up,
messed
it up.
I've messed it up a bunch of times. Yeah,
we always think we're going to say it the right way, and then we say it the wrong way. So the series is Unquestioned Answers.
Well, no, just as an outsider, one might say choose easier titles to say.
Well, it's
based
off of
on
a
book title. So that's how we.
So we can't.
I got you.
Like,
can't rewrite the guy's book.
Fair enough. All right.
We're going on.
Right.
Yeah,
I got you.
I mean, we could, but
We do that.
we could rewrite it and not give him any credit.
Oh,
Very
yeah,
true.
that happens.
It does happen.
Okay, so Tyler, just what Kevin was kind of sharing, you brought this idea that church is not a club, it's a community, right? But the cliche that we were looking at, the unquestioned answer that we were looking at this week, what came from George Jones's song, Just Me and Jesus. And I really want you to sing part of that for us.
I was hoping that you were going to break out in song. You read you gave the lyrics of a different song.
Right.
And I thought for sure you were going to sing that.
There are certain talents that everyone has.
Yeah.
Things are people that are good at.
Yeah.
Like Heather is good at the what, and so many other things that she does here.
Oh, thanks, Tyler.
Kevin on the trumpet.
You're good at the what.
I am.
It's good Sam's not in here.
Yeah. Make sure of that. But I just cannot sing. I don't want to run people out of here.
You've got the golden voice, though. How is
true.
it possible that this silky smooth voice does not sing well?
When I was young, it's funny that my mom was here yesterday. My whole family was, and she told me when I was young, once I hit puberty, she came to me and said, "Hey, honey, I love that you're on the choir, but maybe God has something else for your voice." She said it so gently and so kind.
What a good mom.
What a good mom.
Yes.
That's for real.
More people who go on shows like American Idol and America's Got Talent need your mama in their life to be like, listen,
gently.
Now's not the time. That was in the past. You got to pursue something else now.
Yeah.
It would be very beneficial.
And it was. Yeah.
And it was.
Because I can't even, I'm tone deaf. That's just where I am. Yeah.
All right.
So
you can do like, Jamie wants you to be a part of like, maybe you can do like talk singing, like those, like kind of
spoken
like
word.
Yeah.
I'll give it a shot.
Do some Def Jam kind of stuff. That would
maybe
be pretty
do that.
cool. Yeah. Okay. We'll work on it.
Thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
So the reality is George wrote this song, you were telling us, based on his personal experience of how the church let him down. So he just had to depend on his relationship with Jesus. Like that's where this song kind of came out of. So have you guys personally or even heard others express similar experiences? Like what kinds of circumstances seem to cause people to disconnect from the church and say like, I don't need this in my life because it's just me and Jesus?
Well, I know even our last series, What If Jesus Were Serious? I know Jamie did a great job of just showing how, because we don't, when I say we, I mean the church at large, doesn't reflect the love and grace and truth of Jesus, that the world looks at that and says, y'all don't even believe what you claim to purely based on your actions. And so people are just turned off. In my own experience, even at the church where I grew up, it had become, like what I described, at some point, so much about Sunday morning, and we got so used to being so insulated that whenever we did have a first-time guest, somebody we didn't know come through, you could hear a pin drop and no one would go say hi to them. Everybody would just turn their heads and look like, who is this person that we don't know? And even as a little kid, like that just stood out to me so much that I always thought like, this is what people hear about Jesus. Why is not, it feels like everybody's not welcome. Even from our side, a predominantly black church, when someone came in that didn't look like us, we just did not welcome them well.
Yeah.
And that really, I mean, I could share a ton of things, experiences I've had, but that was always one that stood out to me.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, for me, like the very early experience that I had with my parents when they went through their divorce, that was when our family, well, it started kind of before that, but when my parents started having problems, it was long before the divorce, but when they started having problems, our family dropped out of church, in part because my mom felt very ostracized by people that she thought were in her corner. And they just, I mean, in their defense, I think most people just didn't know how to respond to what they were going through. And so she did not feel very supported or encouraged. And
even culturally back then, like
divorce was
very taboo too, right?
It was far less common. Yeah, and there was drinking problems, and there were a lot of things going on. And but my mom just felt like, the church really wasn't for her, and she walked away from church really until she moved in with us. You know, then she kind of had to go to church because she was living with the pastor.
This is your rent.
So I mean that's firsthand experience for me. Like that's I've seen that happen.
Kevin, have you seen any examples of that?
Yeah, well, I mean, the one that comes to mind immediately is very similar to Jamie's. My folks got divorced when I was like 17, and the same deal. And in my situation, it was a little bit weird. My folks had been having problems for years, but the one who finally like left the marriage and really like was my mom, who was a preacher's daughter. And so my dad, who had not come from a church family at all and basically, you know, discovered church because he was dating my mom back in the day, he was like, okay, so this is what Christianity is. And she, you know, so he immediately was like, she did this to me. She represents Christianity. Christianity must be a load of hooey.
Right.
You know, which obviously that logic doesn't hold very well. But I mean, I think a lot of people, you know, have people who have a negative idea about what Christianity is based on a person or a group of people who have done a thing that's not very Christian. And, you know, Christians can act very unchristian-like.
For sure.
It's just the truth.
Yeah. Well, Tyler, you shared just a little bit about this even now, some of your personal story and how the type of church that you grew up in and your family's involvement there.
The preaching was great.
The preaching was great.
I really enjoyed that. Yeah.
What's it called again?
it's called whooping.
Whooping.
Not like a whooping, like you give a child, like whatever that is. It's just it's the same name, but that's what
That's a real name, like because I've heard preaching like that for sure, but I didn't know like it had a term, like a name for it. All right.
Yeah.
You did a great job.
You did do a great job.
I appreciate that.
Have you thought
That was
about
tough.
like bringing that sort of energy to regular speaking here at Believers?
Believers. One guy came up to me afterwards. He said, "Man, I thought you were going to do that for the whole time." He was like, "But they're not ready for that here." I was like,
They're not ready for that here.
I was like, I don't know if that's true, but yeah.
I think it's probably true. That's awesome, though.
So how did that, I mean, all of our past experiences shape our views in a variety of things that we hold today, right?
100%.
So how did that experience for you, the way you grew up in church, how does that shape your experience or your view of church today and the church that you're involved in and the other churches that you've been involved in your adult life?
That is a good question. I think in looking at the good and the bad, on the good side, I think even Rochelle and I talked about this after Sunday. It was just like being able to appreciate people's differences, how we do different things, different traditions. Although the traditions can go left very easily, it's really cool to just say, hey, man, like, look, they do something different over there. They do it different here.
Yep.
And just being able to kind of just appreciate that. I think for me, what I was speaking more to is just how the way we did our weekly rhythms, I guess you could call it, the Sunday morning gathering, the weekly gathering, was always the same one teacher, one
Yeah.
speaker, and an audience. And so there really wasn't a chance to connect with each other, especially about faith, and learn each other's stories and hear each other's hurts, hopes, and dreams, and just be able to walk with Jesus together. Like that,
Yeah.
Sunday always felt like a performance to me. Like it was just this thing I could just go and do and see, and the rest of the week is all for me. That was kind of how it was for me growing up.
Yeah.
And so that now understanding community, it kind of goes to what Kevin was saying, just like the simplicity of the authentic church and how attractive that is, as opposed to solely focusing on meeting on Sunday morning, which is great. It's awesome.
Sure.
It's needed. But how much are we missing out if we don't have something else where we can just be in community together?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, you illustrated so well too how that format is as good as it is. The benefits that come from it, it's very easy to hide and not be authentic and not go any deeper in your walk with Christ because there's no opportunity for that engagement at that level. So. Yeah, if that's your only experience in church, it's very easy to have it be just a very superficial box that you're checking.
100%.
Yeah.
You asked a question early on in your message. You asked, can the follower of Jesus choose not to engage in the church? And so why is opting out of church engagement not an option for the follower of Jesus?
Man, there's a ton of reasons for that
Yeah.
that we could go into. I'm sure Kevin and Jamie could hop in on that too. But even the word church,
Right.
ecclesia, is a gathering, a community. And so we just cannot get away from that because when Jesus talked about that, there was a building was not in sight. It was
Right.
a group of people who are gathered around his message, his teaching, and who have been transformed by his love, who are going to go out and love their community to hopefully bring people to him. And that's it. That is all it ever has been, and that was all the intention was ever supposed to be.
Yeah.
And you can look at, I know Jamie's a church history buff, so he could look at all of how we got to where we are today. But the heart of it, the spirit of it, the truth of it is that it's all about community.
Yeah.
It always has been.
Yeah.
Jamie, can you talk a little bit to that, like just our history as a church? And I mean, even us getting here to Hub 757, like our building campaign was called Not Just a Building.
Yeah.
So that's something that's like in our DNA
It
when
really
it comes
is.
to
Yeah,
to
and it's
doing
something
church,
I
right?
haven't really heard emphasized a lot in a lot of places, but it's become kind of our mantra that this is not, we even branded the building the way we branded it very intentionally. It's not Believers Church, it's Hub 757, where Believers Church happens to gather.
Right.
And Believers Church is not the building, it's the people who gather here. That's the emphasis of that marking. So if you don't understand why we've done that, that's why we've done that. Paul said, each of you is together, anyone who's a believer is a member of the body of Christ. And then he says, and each of you is a part of it. And that's, to your definition of the church. I mean, it's why if you're a follower of Jesus, you are a part of the body of Christ, whether you participate in it or not. And if you're not, that means you are depriving yourself. You're not the whole body of Christ. You're a part of the body of Christ. You're depriving yourself of the benefit of all of those other parts of the body that are intended to equip you in your walk with Jesus. And the body is lacking what you bring that is going to help
So true.
other people to fully experience what it means to walk with Jesus. And so, we have a very big emphasis around here just to say, you don't go to church, you are the church. That's kind of the mantra that we've used a lot. And I say it a lot because it's so, like, culturally, I think it's just so this thing. We go to church, we do our church things. Time to get our church on.
Yeah.
People say all these things that are just not biblical at all. And like, I kind of get some of the intent behind it, but I just want people to really grasp you are a part of something when when you're a part of the church. You're not just attending something. You're not just a member of something. You're an integral part of something.
Yeah. Kevin, how are you experiencing that in France?
Well, I mean, before I get into the France thing, I just want to jump in on something that he was saying. So, like the way he was talking about the word church and how we sort of misuse the word church biblically. So I'm in the middle of doing these pretty intense studies. I'm doing another master's, and so I'm really doing a lot of study on what it means to worship and what worship is, and we misuse that word a whole lot.
Yep.
Like I say on Facebook all the time, we're getting our worship on this morning, and they're talking about the 4 songs they're going to sing before the preacher preaches, and like that's so not a really good biblical definition of what worship is. So
I call it the warm up.
The warm up. There you go. I like that. That works for me. But so I'm doing this week. I'm doing this. I was talking with Jamie about this. I'm doing this intense study on the book of Hebrews, and so Hebrews talks for like 12 chapters, basically different ways about how awesome Jesus is. That's just that Jesus is awesome in this way, and this way, and this way, and this way. And then it goes right at the end of 12 and then chapter 13. So, because Jesus is so awesome, we should really worship God with reverence. And then it goes into 13, how do we worship God with reverence? And it's talking about hospitality and visiting prisoners and and marriage and like life together. And so that's what worship is.
Yes.
Like that's Hebrews talks a lot about worship, but it doesn't say very much at all about singing.
Yeah.
But life together, serving one another sacrificially, being part of each other's lives, taking care of each other, witnessing to each other, like that's a life of worship. That's how the Bible talks about what worship is.
It's so good.
Yeah,
so
good. So how should engagement in biblical community look different than other community relationships we may have? Because I think particularly in our cultural moment, like we can be a part of all sorts of community groups, right? Like a part outside of church relationships. So there's, PTA groups and like different clubs we can be parts of, and
Anime groups.
Oh,
100%.
geez, Tyler.
Gotta rep it. Can't be ashamed.
Well, you could be, but I respect that you're not.
So there's all sorts of ways that we find community with different groups of people. So how does biblical community look different than that, and why do we need that, even if we're a part of these other community groups?
Yeah, that's a great question, because so many people find community, like you said, CrossFit groups, golf club, whatever it is, like what makes this different? And I think even the definition that I put out there was a place to be known and to be known by others as you follow Jesus. And I think even for me, like sharing my story, being able to be authentic with people where they can see the good and the bad of you, and that they don't turn your backs on you. They don't talk about you behind your back. They love you for who you are, right where you are. And they do the same, and you're able to do that with them and for them too. I think that is just so different and radical than what most people get out in the world with any other kind of group.
Yeah.
Even people who were not believers that we invited to our city group, to our B group even now, when they see us fight with each other, they see us disagree, they see us come back, love each other, forgive each other, have fun together. It just looks so different to be able to be radically open. And I think they can begin to see what we mean when we say that Jesus is our strength, because we're able to be freely weak, freely vulnerable, knowing that he is our identity. We don't have to worry about anything. It's all in him. So that's...
You hit on something yesterday that I thought was good on that topic of, the club stuff and all the different clubs that you could be a part of. And I don't remember how you said it, but the gist of it was engagement in those things is because it's something that you have an interest in. It's something that you're going to get out of it, or something to that effect. And it's different in the church group is different in the sense that, it's something that you get out of it, but it's also something that you put in it. And there are things in the church group that you may not even really want, but you need.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. I just, that really struck me. Like, we have a lot of pursuits of things that they're mostly me-centered kind of things. These are things that I am interested in. That's why I participate in them. But the faith thing's a little bit different. Yeah, I'm interested and I want something from it, but there are things that I don't necessarily want either.
Right. Like what happens when somebody gets on your nerves?
Yeah.
Say something you don't like.
Yeah.
Or rubs you the wrong way, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So you could, if you have the club mentality, you're going to bounce when those kinds of things happen.
Yep.
But if you're in it saying, no, this is what's going to form me to be like Jesus, well, then I gotta endure some stuff. Jesus endured some stuff. And if we're gonna allow it to form us, then we gotta hang through that.
In that vein, like in what ways have you guys experienced Jesus more fully because of the community that you're involved in? And on the flip side, what do you think would happen to your relationship with Jesus if you weren't engaged in that type of community?
Yeah, that's such a good.
That is a great question.
Yeah, I love that.
So I've shared this story a ton of times. Kevin's might be your first time that you've heard it, but Karina, my now wife, we were engaged 3 times, broke up twice. So we went through a crazy season of life, and we were still in that same city group. And so they saw all of it. They saw the fights. They saw the pain I was in, the pain she was in, and they still loved us through every minute of that mess. Like they were right there with us. I had guys telling me, like, Tyler, you screwed up. We still love you. We're right here. Other guys disagree with them. It was back and forth, but I never felt, and she can say this too. I know she would, that she never felt that we were not loved. We had people speaking truth into us graciously. They were compassionate. They were there. And I think that is, more and more I just began to see Jesus in all that. Because I think I try to put Jesus in a box, especially when it comes to, like what you said, worship and how we view those kind of things. But that was worshipful. Being able to experience the love of Jesus from other people in that kind of way.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's really what I wanted to talk about Sunday, was just I want everybody to be able to experience that. Because most people haven't, who have grown up, especially in America, growing up going to church, have not experienced something like that, that kind of community.
Yeah, really good. Yeah, I think thinking about it in those terms, probably one of the things that I despise the most about being engaged in leading a church, which is
Where you going with this?
just like the heavy. It's way more amplified than it actually is. I mean, because the course of negativity comes from a relatively small group of folks, but it's very amplified in my mind. So, but even that, like I think about, like that's the thing I hate the most about what I do is just the constant barrage of criticism and all the stuff that you kind of face. But if I'm going to be formed to be like Jesus, I have to. I mean, Jesus, his whole ministry was criticism,
Right.
Except for for him, it was the opposite. It was a chorus of criticism and a very small number of people who were affirming of him, like the opposite of what I experience. And I barely hang on, at times in what I experience, and yet I think even in that, it is that if I allow it to, it can either make me more cynical and angry, which often it does, or if I allow the Spirit to use those things, it can form me to become more like Christ, more long-suffering, and those fruit of the Spirit. And I think that's what he wants to form in me, and that's part of how he will form those things in me if I allow them to. So, apart from the church, I would be like water. I would gravitate to the lowest amount of resistance in my life.
Yeah,
that's just what we naturally would do. And then it becomes easier, and then the easier it becomes, the less I'm going to actually be formed like Christ. So, apart from the church, I would take a much easier path, and I would reap the negative consequences of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you guys think are some steps that we can take to maintain a healthy sense of community here at Believers?
I think hopefully if people were able to listen yesterday, even recognizing how we view time, how we view community, how we view our schedules.
That was so helpful,
I
by
hope
the
so.
way.
Praise God for that.
So good.
Just to think outside of because in America we are so, I'll use this word, monochronic with our time, that every minute, moment means something, has to be assigned to something, how much that limits, well, often community takes a backseat because of that, because community is fluid. You can't...
Time
As a guy who lives outside of that monochronic thing, like, so in France, time is relative compared to how it is in the States. And then because my ministry's allowed me, I mean, I've had the opportunity to go to Africa several times and teach there. And so like, that's a whole nother level of, and even because our church has got a lot of ties with the churches in Africa, our church in France does. So we have lots of Africans in our churches in France. We don't need to go into why, but there's a tie there. So ideal even in France with lots of people from African backgrounds and their concept of community, their concept of time. And back to your previous question, like that really changes, like hanging out with these people and breaking bread with these people and praying with these people changes how I see Jesus, because they see Jesus in a different way than I do. Like they're coming at it from a whole different place. I got to spend some time in Kenya about 2 months ago, but with a good friend of mine who's a pastor in Cameroon. We were both in Kenya for this conference. And like when I spend time hanging out with him and talking with him, and we've taught together and done a lot of stuff together, when he tells me stories about his relationship with Jesus and his everyday life in his church, like that changes how I see God and Jesus. And like, yes, because you guys have said between the two of you a number of times here in America or American, and so like I don't have that really.
Yeah.
I mean, I come back in here, I always almost have to readjust to, okay, yeah, this is how it is here. I have to kind of put that hat on, But it's a much bigger, broader thing, and I think that being around other Christians and other Christians of diverse backgrounds gives us just a much bigger picture of who God is.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, and even speaking to that, because of our culture, the way we operate, we have to be 10 times more intentional.
That's the word, intentional.
About community and making time and space for that, because if we don't, it will not happen. It just won't.
So I know I have two extreme introverts sitting in the studio with me today. So you guys are the experts to answer this next question, because it can be very intimidating, even for the more outgoing ones of us that may be in this room, to engage in community, to get together with people that we might not know very well or at all for that matter. So tell us about how we help walk with people that are interested in getting involved here. Like, because we want to do that, right? We don't want to just like tell people to get involved in community. We're ready as a staff, as like lead volunteers and stuff, to walk with people to finding like their space and community here. So what are some ways that we go about doing that from the introverts on the panel?
Yes. Represent everybody out there.
Yeah.
We see you. We feel you. We
feel you.
We feel you.
100%.
100%.
Yeah, one of the ways that we do that is through what Tyler leads, which is the discovery experience, which I love how it's kind of structured. It's starting again July 9th.
July 9th.
I remember that date because it's actually my anniversary, and I'm going to be here all day. So sorry, Bonnie. So that's when the next one starts, and it starts with a luncheon, and so I'll be there as part of that. Maybe Bonnie can come and we can have our anniversary lunch together.
Oh, that'd be so nice.
Wouldn't that be
Tyler,
great?
you should get them a special
I gotta make
lunch.
some good food.
Yeah.
We'll get some.
Would you? That'd be great.
Put a rose on the table or something.
Something
like
like
that.
that. Yeah, that'd be great.
Maybe see if Kev can come back and play his saxophone, just like serenade them a little bit.
Oh, man, it's getting better all the time.
It's going to be the best anniversary you ever did have.
No doubt. So, but the discovery experience, even for an introvert, it's a smaller group. It doesn't feel very intimidating, and it's around tables. And so even if there's 30 people in the room, there's only 6 people at your table, and so that's less intimidating. And the idea is it's designed for people who are kind of making their way into believers for the first time or newly getting adjusted, trying to find community, trying to find a way to plug in. And you immediately start to be able to engage with someone just in a small setting, which as an introvert, I find that far less intimidating. And from that, we offer, there will be a B group that kind of launches out of that for those who want to hang with. That's another thing that I don't know about you, but like for the introvert in me, I'll hang with like my people all day long.
Right.
It's when I get around lots of people that it just wears me out.
Yeah.
So if you start forming a community with that smaller group of people there, you can continue to hang with them because a B group will form out of that. So we kind of do we're very intentional in creating a little bit of a space where people can connect with each other. You do other things, helping them connect with an impact team and that kind of stuff too. But it's an easy access point that doesn't require much effort to experience that. So that's one thing.
Yeah. Jamie, you just mentioned impact teams, and I think that's like something that is worthy of talking about here, because a lot of times we think about community being found in small groups, B groups here at Believers. But there's a lot of community that happens when people serve together.
Yes.
And I think some people can come to Believers, some have been coming for a long time, and you can walk in on a Sunday and feel like everything's taken care of, right? Like they must not even need me because everything's running smooth for me walking in from the parking lot, right? There's people saying hello to me. There's people taking care of kids back in Believers Kids. There's a band. There are vocalists. There's a pastor or teacher that's, up on stage. So like they don't need me. So tell us, do we need them? Do we need people to get involved at Believers on an impact team? And how does an impact team give a sense of community?
That's a great question. And if I could make an Uncle Sam poster, well, Jamie's hearing me say this right now, like Uncle Sam, we need you kind of deal, I would do that because we do need, I don't want to use the term need. We have plenty of opportunities for volunteers to serve here. There are, places you don't even see, like the production team, all the things that happen in video world. Jeremy has a team of photographers and those kind of things. Like there's so many places people can serve.
Yeah.
And that's a great opportunity to, like Heather said, to find community, especially if you are slammed during the week. Like time just isn't your friend, but you can be here on a Sunday. That's a great way to hop into an impact team because even on the teams that I lead, they do huddles. And so they get together, they talk about their weeks, they pray with each other, pray for each other. And even then you get to know people, you get to meet people that go out for lunch together. And then that community just starts to form a little more naturally than just.
100%. And I would say, like, if you come in and you feel like, everything's taken care of, they don't really need me. For one, we've put up a great front.
Yes.
Secondly, I would say, I know you shouldn't say we need volunteers, and we don't in the sense that, okay, we're a sinking ship and, join our sinking ship. That's not a great appeal.
Right.
But we do need volunteers. Like I've said this from the stage, we're operating fine in Believers Kids, for instance. Like we're never going to be understaffed for what we have because we will turn people away before we do that. That's just the nature of how we operate. But we're certainly not operating optimally. We're not able to do capacity because we don't have the volunteers needed for that. So there's so many more things that we want to do that we can't right now because we just don't have the manpower, woman power to pull it off. And it's and it speaks directly, Tyler, to what you talked about yesterday with that time commitment continuum also, because that level of community does require, you're not going to experience any community without an investment of time. Right. It just doesn't happen. 100%. Yep. And you can't make an impact with your life, which is why we call them impact teams. You can't make an impact with your life without an investment of time. Right. So you're going to have to come to terms with this. Like if I really want to be who God is calling me to be in this and be a part of not a club, but a community of people, it's going to require an investment of some type on me. And, like we can make it as minimal and low impact and, less demanding as possible. But the reality is if you go into something with zero commitment and zero sacrifice, you're going to get zero out of it.
Sure.
Well, that's just the thing. So, you should do it because, things need done. You should do it because you need community. You should do it because it's going to help you be intentional about flipping some of that idea of time versus community that is just so critical in our walk with Christ. And I love how it's just how God orchestrates, for us to talk about it from an American perspective and then to immediately have on the couch someone who can share that's actually how it works in other parts of the world.
Well, and just to piggyback on what you were saying, I mean, all those things are true, and believers function so well because there's so many people, serving so well. And you guys do a great job of organizing that and making that a part of your DNA. But to go back to the thing, like I was talking about with Hebrews, I mean, all of us, you listening out there, me, Jamie, we all need to be serving too. I mean, as a believer, if you're a Christ follower, I mean, the Bible's pretty clear. You're saved to serve. Yeah. You're not, it's not a club. I mean, you're supposed to be serving, doing something, and that's part of the joy of being a believer. And if you're not doing that, even though it's working, even though it's, I was talking to my son about going to his basically B group, men's group. He's like, oh, I'm tired. But I said, but if you go, and he goes and like, oh, so happy I went. We got to, always. That's always the way it works. But we're created to do that. And you need to be serving somewhere. I mean, I think I can say biblically, as a Christ follower, you're supposed to be serving somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think just if you do call believers home, like one of the best ways to be an active part of the church body that we have here is to invite people to join you in those things.
Yeah.
And that takes down that intimidation factor a ton. Like if you're a person who's involved in a B group or you're involved in an impact team, to invite someone else that is in your circle or maybe even on the fringes that's not involved in these community opportunities, just invite them to join you, invite them to come to your B group, invite them to be a part of like checking out your impact team. If they don't like your impact team, we've got plenty of others. And Tyler is excited about helping you find the one that is going to work best for you. So I hope this conversation has been helpful to everybody as we've gone a little bit deeper than we were able to do yesterday. But that's all we've got time for today. So until next time, we're going to ask you to share this out on your social media feeds. Invite some friends to join you in watching or listening to this wherever you get your podcasts. And we will see you on Sunday as we continued Unquestioned Answers at 9 and 10:45. Go be love, everybody.